Hi everyone, welcome to my kitchen. My name is Colleen Hill. I have been going to HTLC since 1987, and I have been in charge of the soup suppers for, I don't even know, 5 to 7 years. I can't believe that almost a year has gone by since our last soup supper. And since we cannot get together this year, I am coming to you with a great vegetarian/vegan recipe that you can also add meat to. It is very adaptable. Something you may not know about me is that I went to culinary school a while back, and that's a fun fact for you. So this recipe is called Seriously Good Vegetable Soup, but my family and I add chicken, so we call it Seriously Good Chicken and Vegetable Soup. So grab your favorite apron, your favorite drink, I have a Coke Zero, and come along with me and learn how to cook this great soup. The nice thing about this vegetable soup is it uses whatever you have on hand in the kitchen. So today, I'm going to be using Yukon Gold potatoes. I'm going to be using red, green, and yellow bell peppers, onion and celery. And today I'm using peeled baby carrots because that's what I have on hand. But if you want to get carrots and peel them and cut them up yourself, you're welcome to do that. And then spinach will go into this later. So before we get started, you need to clean your vegetables. So what I use is when it's a vegetable that can handle some pressure and some scrubbing, I use my brush. And definitely potatoes need to be scrubbed and any black spots cut out. So make sure you wash all of your vegetables. The bell peppers can have a little bit of a scrub, but if you're using any vegetable that bruises, you need to be a little more gentle or use your hand with a good scrubbing too, but always use water just to make sure you're not feeding your family something gross. So anyway, don't forget to clean your vegetables. Okay, your vegetables are all clean and ready to go. So what's next? Well, we're gonna cut them off. But before we do that, let's talk knives. So the first one I'm gonna show you, this is a paring knife. This is a great knife. We're gonna be cutting up a bell pepper. Some people really prefer the paring knife just because it's small and easy to get into. The next one that is a beauty. This is a chef's knife. So pretty decent sized knife. This is a great one too, very sharp, great for cutting our potatoes if we want to, sweet potatoes, or it'll even cut the bell pepper really well too. The next knife, which is my favorite, is the Santupo knife. Notice the difference. So this is a more flat edge, and this is smaller too for me. It fits really well in my hand, and I tend to use this knife more than I do any other knife in the kitchen. But one that I'm not going to be using today, but I do want to show, is the boning knife. Now, not only is this great for when you're cutting a chicken, but I like it for tomatoes, because a lot of times when you're cutting tomatoes, the blade will sometimes get caught up in the skin and it smushes it out. Then you have tomato seeds and juice everywhere. This actually is a really sharp knife and is beautiful and delicate and will just cut right through your tomato. So next time you're thinking about cutting up a tomato, think about using this. All right, so let's get dicing. The first thing we're gonna cut is the bell pepper. There are a lot of ways to cut up our bell pepper. I just learned a new way from Gordon Ramsay, and I'm actually going to try it for the first time right now. So I'm hoping it works so that it can go into this video. So let's find out. First thing you do is you cut the stalk off. Then you're going to turn it upside down, and then you're going to just start cutting it off the corners like this. Okay, and then you have like this little Christmas tree thing left. Now the reason why I chose to use this one is because there are a lot of other ways that you can cut one, but it leaves the seeds and juice and everywhere. And notice that most of the ribs are stayed here as well. So that's an interesting way to cut it. All right, so now that we have our Christmas tree, I'm just gonna move that to the side. We are actually going to start, let me just trim this off, by cutting them in julienne, and then we're going to actually dice them. Then one of the things that a lot of people hold their knives way back here. You don't have a lot of control, so the best way to do is have your 3 fingers and have your thumb and your pointer finger like this. When you're cutting, you should never be cutting where your fingers are out like this, because that's a good way to chop off a finger. We don't want to do that. So you actually tuck them in so that when you're cutting, it's okay if it rubs up against your knuckle. A lot of people will feel it that way, and then you just keep moving your fingers back. So you're going to cut these whatever size that you want. I'm not making them real small. And then you have these. I like to keep them together for the next cut because now I want to dice them. So I just kind of put them together. Again, be very careful when you are cutting. I have gotten pretty lazy over the years after going to culinary schools, drilled into me how to cut. And then I had to do that. And then I kind of got lazy over the years, but I'm going to do my best right now. So now you're just going to cut them like this. Keep moving those fingers back so you don't chop it up. I am not a fast cutter because I don't want to lose a finger. So it is okay. You see these chefs on TV and they're so fast. Take your time and just keep cutting until you have finished. When you get to the end there. Okay, now you have this great bunch. Now I'm going to continue to cut this way. So I'll finish cutting these up and get back to you. Okay, now all of our red pepper is ready to go. It's diced and beautiful. And if you like cutting these up, that's great. You can do it. But I also have an easier way. You could do it this way, or you could do it this way. You could go to the store and actually get it already chopped up. And look, it has the red, green, and yellow already ready to go, chopped in. Toss it in, and you're ready to go. Nice little quick tip for you. Okay, we have a couple more things to cut. The next is an onion. I'm going to be cutting a red onion just to show you. I'm actually putting white onion in, and I'll show you in a minute where that's going to come from. All right, one of the things that you need to know is that you always keep the root on this when you cut it because it really helps keep it together. Another thing you want to know with your knife is let the weight of the knife do the work. So when you're cutting here, you're going to be cutting it in half. So notice that I'm just using this. I'm going to be cutting it so that it's still together. It's not falling apart. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're using the 3-finger method. We are going to have this middle finger out a little bit. So that's the knuckle that's going to guide you. We're not going to cut all the way through because we don't want it to fall apart. So we're going to actually try, you'll see some lines in your onion. We're going to be cutting those. I'm not using my fingers correctly, but if I were, it would look like this. All right. And it's okay that some of these are at an angle. Okay, this one, cutting almost to the thing. All right, I'm gonna put it together like this. And then the next step that we're gonna do is you're gonna cut it at an angle a little bit. So you're gonna cut through it, keeping this together, kind of at an upward angle. Be very careful with this. And you're just cutting a little bit to the root, and you're gonna do one more at the top, like this. Again, being very careful with how your fingers are. And then once you're done with that, you can go through. Again, it's easier when you let the weight of the knife work for you, so you don't have to push so much. I'm just kind of pushing down and the weight is going. So you can see when you can make it smaller than that if you wanted to. I cut these a little wide. I wanted a little bit wider one. And then you can continue to cut that. Finish it off, but I'm just showing you here. All right, we've cut up our onion. It looks beautiful, but if you don't like cutting up an onion, there's an easier way to do it. Already cut up onion and celery from the market. It's already cut up for you, ready to go. Okay, so let's dice up a potato. Now the first thing that we're going to be doing is we need to cut a flat edge. So this way the potato is not moving. I'm going to cut a couple things like this. Then, again, I don't want to fine dice, so I'm just going to take a couple of these, and I'm going to cut like this, and now like this. Now, If you want them to be exact, notice that I don't seem to care. I don't with this because this is going into the soup. It doesn't have to be beautiful. If it was something that I was cutting up and I was going to bake and then you were going to roast the potatoes, I would make sure they were all the same size. But for here, I'm just cutting it up quickly. I want to get it into the soup so I can actually eat some soup. Okay, we're ready to start. Now, what I wanted to show you here though is I like to prep everything and have it ready to go because sometimes when things are moving fast, I don't want to be like, oh, I forgot to cut that. So even I'm using this petite diced tomatoes. I have the lid off ready to go. I've already opened the pan. And I have the vegetables ready to go. And what I've already done is I've already put my spices in here together. By the way, this is using curry and thyme. For those of you who do not like curry, or think you don't, you will in this soup. It is so good. The thyme and the curry are the stars of this show. So don't leave it out because it really is the star of the show here. Okay, now I'm here at the stove. Turn so you can see. I have my beautiful pot here and it is ready to go. So the first thing we're going to do is turn it on. I'm going to do a medium-high heat, and I let it heat up for just a bit, and then I will pour the olive oil in it and let the olive oil heat up for just a bit. Typically, recipes call for a lot of oil, and I don't use as much as it's called for because it doesn't need it. I think that's overkill in a lot of ways. So just as you're doing it, you can follow the recipe that's written for you. Or you can also cut back on that number as well. So I let this heat up a little bit, and the reason I do before I pour the oil in is you'll notice if you pour it in right at the same time, the olive oil won't spread around really well. Once you heat it up a bit, and I can kind of feel that it's doing a nice job there, I'll pour a little bit in. Now, the first thing you do is you put your vegetables in. I like to put the carrots and potatoes in first because they take a little bit longer to cook. And I don't want them too hard. Otherwise, I have done it where I put all the vegetables in together, but you don't want some mushy vegetables and some that are still hard. So the best thing to do is with the harder vegetables like carrots and potatoes, let them cook for a few minutes before you put all the rest in there. All right, so this is ready. I am just going to pour a little bit of olive oil. I don't think it needs as many tablespoons as what the recipe calls for. I'll let that heat up for a second. I see it's already moving around, and then I move it around so that it's all over. So now I'm going to go grab my potatoes. So next, I'm going to add the potatoes and the carrots. And hopefully you add them actually into the pan. There we go. I love to use bamboo utensils. I think they're the best for when you're sauteing. I'm going to stir these around a little bit, and then I'm going to heat them up for about 2 minutes before I do the rest of my vegetables. Okay, all vegetables are in now. I waited my 2 to 3 minutes for the carrots and the potatoes, and now all the vegetables are in there. And I will be stirring them. They're going to cook for 6 to 8 minutes. Again, you do not want mushy vegetables, so stay on top of that because that's the worst. Well, maybe some people like it, but I don't. All right, so I'm going to be stirring this. In 6 to 8 minutes will be done, and I'll show you what we're going to be doing next. Okay, the next, been cooking for 6 to 8 minutes, and now I'm going to put this curry and the thyme in. And within, I'm going to stir it all together, and I'll let it just get fragrant. Oh, it smells so good. All right, it's cooking and it smells amazing. The next thing we're going to do is we're taking our can of tomatoes and pouring it in. And I'm just going to mix that up really well. Oh my gosh, amazing. The house will smell amazing. Next, you pour your broth in and the water. I did the broth first, and now I'm just adding the water. I started adding, the recipe will call for 4 cups of the broth and 2 cups of water. I actually add 4 and 4. And the reason I do that is because it makes a lot more soup and the flavor is still very flavorful. So after you pour this in, they also recommend you put in a bay leaf. I have done that, and I also haven't done it. And either way, it doesn't, there's nothing in there. I don't feel like the bay leaf is really adding a lot. Just make sure if you do add it, you don't eat it. So make sure you take it out before you eat your soup or serve it to other people too. So now we're going to bring it to a boil. And once we do that, then we can cover it partially. So I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. So this is also in the directions where you can add the red pepper flakes. I know Joshua would love it if I put the red pepper flakes in, but Rob not so much. So I actually don't add them in. And if Joshua wants it later, he can add it. But it does give it a bit of a kick, and it is really good. But again, it's one of those things that you can add or not add. It's up to you. Okay, it's boiling. It looks amazing. And now we're going to turn it down to a simmer, and we're going to partially, for the most part, cover it. We're just going to leave a little bit open like that. And now it's going to cook for 25 minutes, and then we will add some spinach. Now at this point, this is when we can think about the chicken. There's a lot of options for chicken. You can bake some yourself and then shred it or cut it up and put it in the soup. You can get a Costco rotisserie chicken or your Vons rotisserie chicken, cut it up. You wouldn't have to put in right away because it's already pretty soft. Or Costco also has the refrigerated. They cut up their rotisserie chicken, and then you can buy that meat already cut up. So you have some options there that make it really easy. If you want to bake some chicken and then add it, you can cook that about on 400 for about 18 to 20 minutes, cooking it to about 165 degrees to make sure it's cooked all the way. And then the best thing, if you decide you want to shred it, use your KitchenAid. So I'll show you. Use your KitchenAid. You put the chicken in here and you use your paddle. And then you put it on, and you put it on medium, and you put the chicken in there. And it works best when the chicken is not super hot, but pretty warm, and it'll shred it. Now just be careful with this, because the longer you have it in there, you might shred it really too thin for what you want for soup. But if you haven't tried this, try it, because someone told me about it and I was like, how would that work? It is one of the best tips. So for shredding chicken, I do not like to shred chicken with 2 forks. So if you'd like to do that, try it and let me know how it goes. I think you'll love that. Okay, I have 5 minutes left on this soup, and it smells so good. I can't wait to eat it. So 2 things left. 1, spinach. We're adding the spinach at the last 5 minutes. So what I did is I cut it up. I just did a rough cut, so I didn't do very fine leaves. Threw it in. You can do whatever you want. If you want it a lot smaller, you can cut it up, but I just kind of did a rough cut. Threw it in there. It'll cook for 5 minutes. Once that's done, I'm going to add a tablespoon of lemon juice. And the lemon juice will just bring out all of the flavors. This recipe also calls for olive oil at the very end. I don't add it. That's up to you. And then once we all have it in our bowls, we'll customize it ourselves. If we think it needs more salt or pepper, or in Joshua's case, he'll add the red pepper flakes, which I did not add to our big pot here. So he'll add that just for that little kick. So there's still a lot of customizing. All right, so 5 more minutes and we get to eat this. Okay, I'm about to serve it. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? I'm just heating it up a little bit more. I'm gonna stir it a little bit. Look at all this. So I added the chicken. Oh, yum. Our soup is ready and we're really excited to eat it. It smells so good. The Hill family wishes you good soup and a blessed Lent.